The Ghost in Apartment 313. Part 1. Lashonda pushed the door of Apartment 313 open with a creak that echoed through the dusty hallway. "Well, it's got character," she said, glancing around the dimly lit space. "Character? More like a horror movie set," Tryon replied, rolling his eyes as he dropped their last box. "Maybe we should have chosen somewhere less haunted." "Haunted?" Lashanda laughed, but her voice wavered. "You're joking, right? I mean, look at the peeling paint and those flickering lights." He gestured dramatically. "It's practically begging for a ghost to show up." As they settled in, the apartment seemed to come alive. The lights flickered ominously, and a whisper floated through the air, barely audible but unmistakable. "Help me." "Did you hear that?" Lashanda's eyes widened. Tryon shrugged. "Probably the wind. It's an old building." But the next night, as they lay in bed, the whispers returned, now more urgent. "Help me, please." Lashanda sat up. "I can't ignore this. We need to find out what happened to the last tenant." "Or we could ignore it and sleep," Tryon suggested, pulling the covers tighter around himself. "No, someone could be in trouble." Days turned into restless nights, and Lashanda's obsession grew. She dug through old records at the library and uncovered the story of Clara, the tenant who vanished without a trace. "She lived here for years, then poof, gone. Just like our sanity," Tryon muttered, watching her growing obsession with increasing concern. Finally, one stormy night, Lashanda stood in the dark hallway, the air thick with tension. "Clara, if you're here, show yourself." The lights flickered violently, then plunged into darkness. A cold breeze swept through, carrying a soft, mournful moan. "Help me." Tryon grasped Lashanda's arm, his heart racing. "What do you want us to do?" "Find me." With a shared glance, they knew they had to confront the truth. Together, they would uncover Clara's fate, even if it meant facing the shadows that lurked in their home. The Ghost in Apartment 313, Part 2. Lashanda and Tryon stood frozen in the pitch-black hallway, the air thick with an icy chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The faint whisper of "help me" echoed again, louder this time, as if the voice were right beside them. "What do you think she means? Find her?" Lashanda whispered, her breath visible in the sudden cold. Her heart pounded, adrenaline mixing with fear, but her determination was stronger than ever. "I don't know," Tryon muttered, his voice tight. "But we're not gonna get any answers standing here like idiots." He reached for his phone, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but the room remained oppressive, the shadows seeming to move just beyond the light's reach. "Let's check the apartment again. Maybe there's something we missed," Lashanda suggested, moving toward the door, her hand trembling as she turned the knob. Inside, the apartment seemed unchanged, except for the oppressive silence that now filled the space. Lashanda's eyes scanned the room, searching for any clue. It was when she looked toward the far corner, behind the faded armchair, that she noticed something. A faint outline in the wall, barely visible, as if the plaster had been disturbed. "Tryon, look at this," she called, kneeling down to inspect the crack. He joined her, his flashlight illuminating the area, and they both saw it at the same time. An old door hidden behind the wall, almost invisible unless you were looking closely. With a shared glance, they knew they couldn't turn back. Lashanda's hand shook as she pushed against the wall. It gave way with an eerie groan, revealing a narrow, dark passageway leading deep into the building's heart. The whisper echoed once more, but this time it wasn't just a plea. It was a command. "Come find me, before it's too late." Together they stepped into the darkness, the weight of Clara's unknown fate pressing down on them, as the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening thud. The Ghost in Apartment 313, Part 3. They moved cautiously down the narrow passage, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust that coated the floor. The air grew colder with each step, the temperature dropping so suddenly that Lashanda's breath came out in visible puffs. She gripped Tryone's hand tightly, his tension palpable beside her. The whispers had stopped, but the silence that followed was even more unnerving, as if something waited just beyond their reach. The passage opened into a small, hidden room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were lined with old, faded photographs and scraps of paper pinned haphazardly. In the center of the room was a dusty old mirror, its surface clouded with age. The air around it seemed to pulse with energy, thick and almost alive. Lashanda stepped forward, drawn to it despite the gnawing fear in her chest. As she reached out to touch the glass, the temperature dropped even further, a freezing chill that cut through her skin. The whispers returned, louder now, reverberating in the room, mixing with a deep, guttural growl. The reflection in the mirror rippled like water, revealing a figure, Clara. Her face was pale, gaunt, eyes wide with terror as she stared back at them from the mirror. "Help me," she whispered once more, her voice strained, desperate. "It's not what you think." Before Lashanda could react, the mirror shattered with a violent crash, sending shards of glass scattering across the floor. A cold, clammy hand shot out of the broken frame, grasping at Lashanda's wrist, pulling her toward the glass. Tryone screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the roar of wind that suddenly filled the room. In that final, deafening moment, Lashanda realized the truth. Clara hadn't been asking for help. She had been warning them. The shadows swallowed them whole, and the apartment was silent once more. The end.